You open a retirement calculator at 2 in the morning and type in your age, your savings, your salary. The screen loads a number, $1.3 million. Your stomach drops. You close the tab, but that number is not the truth. It is not even close to the truth. For decades, the financial industry has sold you a single magic figure, a million here, 2 million there. As if retirement were a flat target. Everyone has to hit in the same way. It isn't. And believing it is the reason so many people either panic and give up on saving altogether or save the wrong way for 30 years without knowing it. Here is what most Americans actually need to retire, and why almost nobody is told the real version. Start with the number everyone quotes, 70 to 80%. That is your income replacement ratio. The percentage of your pre-retirement income you need each year once you stop working, according to guidance long used by the Social Security Administration and repeated by firms like Fidelity and T. Rowe Price. Not 100%. You are not paying payroll taxes anymore. You are not commuting 5 days a week. You are not saving 15% of every paycheck into a 401k because the saving phase is over. The math is smaller than you think, but almost nobody starts there. They start with a scary round number instead. Now bring in the man who actually did the research. In 1994, a financial planner named William Bengen published a study that would quietly reshape the entire retirement industry. He wasn't trying to find a savings target. He was trying to answer a narrower question. If you retire with a portfolio of stocks and bonds, how much can you withdraw every year without running out of money over a 30-year retirement, even through the worst market crashes in history? His answer became known as the 4% rule. Withdraw 4% of your portfolio in year one. Adjust that dollar amount for inflation every year after, and in almost every historical scenario he tested, including retiring right before the Great Depression, the money lasted. Flip that rule backward, and you get the real formula for what you need. If 4% is a safe withdrawal rate, then your target isn't a fixed number like $1 million. It's 25 times your annual expenses. Not your income, your expenses. The actual amount of money that leaves your bank account every year to keep your life running. Someone who needs $40,000 a year to live comfortably needs roughly $1 million invested. Someone who needs $60,000 needs $1.5 million. Someone who has already paid off their house and lives on $30,000 a year needs $750,000. Same country, same retirement age, 3 completely different targets. Because the number was never about you turning a certain age. It was always about what your life actually costs. This is where the story gets uncomfortable. Because most people aren't anywhere close to either version of that math. The Federal Reserve's 2022 survey of consumer finances found that the median retirement account balance for American families approaching retirement age, 55 to 64, was around $185,000, not $1.3 million, not even close to 25 times a typical retiree's expenses. And the Employee Benefit Research Institute has tracked this gap for years in its annual Retirement Confidence Survey, consistently finding that a majority of workers have saved less than $50,000 total, while simultaneously telling researchers they expect a comfortable retirement. So let's walk through what actually happens when someone in that gap reaches 65. Picture a couple, both 63, combined retirement savings of $190,000, almost exactly the national median. They own their home. They have Social Security coming. On paper, retirement feels close. But run their number through Bengen's 25 times rule, and the math turns cold fast. $190,000, withdrawn at 4%, produces about $7,600 a year. That's it. Social Security has to cover almost everything else. And for the average retired worker in 2024, that benefit was just over $22,000 a year. Add it up, and this couple is living on roughly $30,000 annually. Combined, unless they keep working, downsize aggressively, or both. That is not a scare tactic. That is the median. Half of American households approaching retirement are below it. There's another piece almost nobody budgets for, and it has nothing to do with rent or groceries. Fidelity Investments publishes an annual estimate of retiree healthcare costs, and their 2024 figure put the average 65-year-old couple's out-of-pocket medical expenses over the rest of their life at around $330,000. Even with Medicare, not a catastrophic illness. Just ordinary premiums, prescriptions, and copays added up over 20 or 30 years. Most people's mental image of retirement expenses is a smaller version of their current life. It rarely includes a number, that large sitting quietly in the background, which is one more reason the 25 times expenses formula has to include realistic healthcare costs, not just the visible ones, like housing and food. Fidelity also publishes something simpler that most people have never seen: age-based savings benchmarks. By 30, aim to have saved roughly 1 times your annual salary. By 40, 3 times. By 50, 6 times. By 60, 8 times. By 67, 10 times your salary. It's not a perfect formula, and it assumes a fairly standard retirement age and lifestyle, but it does something the million-dollar headline never does. It gives you a checkpoint every decade, instead of one terrifying deadline at the end. Here is the counterintuitive twist, though, and it's the part almost nobody tells you. The savings number was never actually the lever that mattered most. The savings rate was. A study frequently cited from Vanguard's How America Saves research shows that the single biggest predictor of whether someone hits a comfortable retirement isn't their income, their investment picks, or even the market's performance during their career. It's the percentage of income they consistently redirected into savings, starting as early as possible. And left alone, 2 people earning the exact same salary for 30 years, one saving 6% and one saving 15%, don't retire with a small gap between them. Because of compound growth, they can retire with a gap of hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes more than the entire balance of the person who saved less. This is the same insight behind Daniel Kahneman's Nobel-winning work on how humans actually make decisions under uncertainty. People are wired to overweight a single dramatic number, the million-dollar headline, and underweight a boring, repeated decision made every 2 weeks for 30 years. A retirement account statement doesn't feel dramatic. It feels invisible. So people optimize for the thing that feels urgent, like this month's bills, and quietly underfund the thing that's actually shaping their future. Because the cost of skipping one contribution never shows up immediately. It shows up decades later, as a much smaller number on a screen at 2 in the morning. Now bring this back to what your life actually looks like today. You don't need to know your exact number, the day you turn 25, or 35, or even 45. Nobody does, because your expenses will change, your income will change, and Social Security rules will likely shift before you retire too. What you need is the calculation most people never run. Take your realistic future annual expenses. Add a real estimate for healthcare. Multiply the total by 25, and that's your honest target. Not a marketing number pulled from an ad. Then work backward to a savings rate, not a savings goal. 15% of income, started in your 20s, following ordinary index funds, has historically outpaced almost every attempt to time the market or chase a bigger number later. Think about what 15% actually feels like, day to day. On a $50,000 salary, that's roughly $625 a month. Not a windfall, not a sacrifice that changes your lifestyle, just a transfer that happens before you ever see the money. The person who sets this up at 25 and never touches it again isn't relying on brilliant stock picks or lucky timing. They're relying on Burton Malkiel's core argument in A Random Walk Down Wall Street. That broad, low-cost index investing, held consistently through every crash and every recovery, beats almost every attempt to outsmart the market. The strategy is deliberately boring. That's the point. Boring is what survives 30 years. The big Jess money lie about retirement was never the size of the number. It was the idea that there's one number at all, and that discovering it is the hard part. The hard part is smaller and far less dramatic than a headline. It's the 15%, moved automatically, decade after decade, while everyone else is busy panicking over $1 million. They were never required to have in the first place. You open the retirement calculator again. This time you don't type in a fantasy number pulled from an ad. You type in what your actual life costs, multiply it by 25, and for the first time, the number on the screen feels like something you can actually build toward, not something to close the tab on.